Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. Today we're talking about the 2026 Kentucky U.S. Senate race, as on Tuesday they're going to be the Republican U.S. Senate primary and the Democrat U.S. Senate primary as well happening in that state. So in today's video I'm going to cover both of them very briefly. I'm going to explain why I personally think that the Kentucky Republican primary probably plays a more important role in terms of who's going to end up winning the Senate race, but I'll be getting to all that in just a moment. So first we're going to start on the Republican side, where there are a bunch of Republican candidates running, overall about 11 of them. The two most notable candidates at this current point are Andy Barr and Daniel Cameron. Now just to give you a brief little background on this race, this is the incumbent U.S. Senator's seat, Mitch McConnell. He declined to run for an 8th term in the U.S. Senate. He's been one of the longest U.S. Senators, or serving U.S. Senators in the United States Senate, so he's decided not to run for another term. As for the Republican candidates in the race, for a long time it's been a 3-person race between Andy Barr, Daniel Cameron, and businessman Nate Morris. Now, Nate Morris is someone that's come in as a political outsider and has actually gotten a pretty large amount of support in this primary so far. Now, he never got to first place or second place, but he was polling very considerably around the 15% mark around the time when he dropped out of the race. And even in the few polls that came after Morris dropping out of the race, he was still getting 8 to 9% of the vote. So Morris played a very significant role here. Now, Andy Barr and Daniel Cameron have been going back and forth throughout this really entire process between first place and second place. The polls actually have shifted from where it started out, where Daniel Cameron, the Republican nominee for governor against Andy Barr in 2023, that may be where you recognize the name from. He started out as the leader in this Republican primary in most of the polls. The first one that didn't have him leading was the Emerson College poll from the end of January, beginning of February of 2026. And then we've seen him and Barr go back and forth on who was leading. Now, on May 1st, Nate Morris dropped out of the race and endorses Andy Barr. Now, a large reason that is the case, that happened, was President Trump, the United States President of the United States, weighed into this race and officially endorsed Andy Barr in this race. Trump also made a deal with Nate Morris as well, which is if he drops out of the race and endorses Andy Barr, President Trump is going to give Nate Morris either a cabinet position or an ambassadorship in Trump's second-term administration. So Trump, by getting Morris to drop out, giving him a position and endorsing Andy Barr, helps clear the field and makes it basically a two-way race between Andy Barr and Daniel Cameron. Now, the polling data from the political averages show a very close race still. Barr at 26.4, Cameron 24.2, only a lead of 2.2%. But the main question here is the undecided voters. Roughly 34.1% of the vote is undecided in this race. So that's going to be a very important amount of people deciding, are they going to vote for Barr or for Cameron when everything is said and done. So that's where the polling currently stands. As for this race, this is where things are. There hasn't been any, obviously, early information or anything yet for the Kentucky U.S. Senate map. The polling, which, as I showed on the other slide here, this is where it looked like for a long time Cameron led for most of this race. The closest Nate Morris really got was right before he dropped out. He was at 13.2%, but it's clearly been a two-person race. Cameron's support has slowly gone down over time. Since the Trump endorsement, Andy Barr's support has spiked. He is now in first place and leads over Cameron by roughly about 10 points in the polling average. On the Kalshi market odds, things are even more lopsided, where early on Daniel Cameron led, then for a little bit Nate Morris actually took the lead in this race, then Andy Barr took the lead, then it was very close between Nate Morris and Andy Barr, with them going back and forth on the Kalshi odds for first place. There was a time where if Nate Morris was polling strong, that perhaps Trump would endorse Nate Morris over Andy Barr. That would have made things more complicated in terms of this race. But then ultimately, Andy Barr starts to pull ahead. Trump endorses Barr. Nate Morris drops out. Now Andy Barr is the overwhelming favorite on the Kalshi odds to be the Republican nominee. So the polling shows a lot of undecided voters, but one that Andy Barr is currently leading over Daniel Cameron, though by a 10-point lead and essentially a 2-point race. We're going to have to wait and see how it ultimately shakes up. It is possible Daniel Cameron could win this primary if there's a big enough turnout for him that the polls, or that the markets and the polls are currently missing, but Andy Barr seems to be the more likely candidate to win this race when everything is said and done. But still, Barr versus Cameron in this primary is going to be interesting to see how it all ultimately shakes out. As for the Democratic side, it is interesting. There are two Democrats running. Some names may be familiar here. There's Amy McGrath and Charles Booker, both of which are running. I do believe both of which are past U.S. Senate nominees in the state of Kentucky as well for the Democrats. Yeah, so the 2020 race was Amy McGrath, who lost by 19.5%. And 2022, Charles Booker lost to Rand Paul by 23.6%. So both of them are running in this primary to be the Democratic U.S. Senate candidate once again. There's also Dale Romans and a few other candidates running as well, but it's going to be either McGrath or Booker in this race. As for the polling in this one so far, they have a few polls. They have the Emerson poll from back in March 29 through 31. They don't have the average on this site, so I'm going to go to the Wikipedia page and look at the polling average for that one. They have the race to the White House polling average, where Booker is at 35.7. This was as of February 5th, 2026, though, so take that with a grain of salt. Booker's at 17.6, Amy McGrath's at 18.1, so a very sizable lead for Booker in that one. In terms of the market odds, this one is also very lopsided, where it started out with Pamela Stevenson as the leading Democratic candidate for a while, and then once Amy McGrath entered the race, she actually skyrocketed very high, up to 99% chance to be the nominee. Charles Booker seems to get in the race, then he took the lead. Him and Amy McGrath were very close right around January, and now it's really been Charles Booker's Democratic primary to lose ever since then, and he still remains the leading candidate heading into today, where he has a 94% chance to win this primary as of right now. So the Calci odds seem to certainly project that Charles Booker is the most likely Democratic candidate as of right now. Amy McGrath down at roughly about 7% to win that one. As for where things currently stand nationally, President Trump overall is down roughly about 17 points across the United States, which is giving the Democrats a lot of optimism in a lot of battleground states and even some more leaning Republican states that could become competitive in this race with the right candidate. But Kentucky's probably not going to be one of those states. When it comes at the election side of things, it voted for Donald Trump by 30.5% in 2024. And looking at the county-wide level map, there's only two counties that went for Kamala Harris, and Jefferson County, where the city of Louisville is, and Fayette County, where the city of Lexington is. Those are the only two counties that voted blue on the presidential map in 2024. So even with Trump's approval rating down 17 points, the state of Kentucky is still voting for Trump by 30 points at the bare minimum. This should still be a over 15-point Republican win on the U.S. Senate side of things. But still, we do important to show you the election results of Kentucky. That's Trump's approval rating. That's going to be the general election. The market odds show obviously a very similar circumstance here. Republicans favored 94-6, obviously a safe margin to win this race. In terms of the polling, they don't have much on here. They just have one poll from back in December for a generic Republican versus Charles Booker, and the Republican was leading by roughly about 14 points, with still 14% either other or no decision at that current point in time. After the general election rankings, all solid Republican across the board. The only polling the Wikipedia page has is from the Democratic Public Policy Polling, which is a polling firm that's affiliated with the Democratic Party. Essentially, this is like if you're going to find a poll that makes the Democrats look as good as they are, it's the Public Policy Public Policy Polling firm. And they have Barr versus Booker at roughly about a 11-point lead for Barr. Cameron roughly about a 7-point lead. Nate Morris is only a 1-point lead. So if it ends up being Andy Barr, which is 11 points, and the Democratic Pro poll, which is sponsoring Booker's campaign, we're probably going to see at least a 15-point victory for Andy Barr when everything is said and done. So that being said, on the 2026 Senate map, obviously Kentucky we have as safe Republican, as I've been talking about throughout this entire video. That's not really much of a surprise, but still there are about 10 Senate races right now that I currently have around 5 points or under or near that category, and we're going to have to wait and see how it all goes in these other states. But as for Kentucky, really shouldn't be too competitive in terms of the general election. So the main thing to watch for Kentucky on Tuesday, for me, is the Republican primary between Andy Barr and Daniel Cameron, and the Democratic primary between Charles Booker and Amy McGrath. Though for the general election, it seems Andy Barr versus Daniel Cameron certainly has a lot more importance, because whichever candidate wins that primary is likely going to be the next senator from the state of Kentucky and is going to succeed the longtime Republican U.S. Senator Mitch McConnell. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like and subscribe if you did. Please leave a like on the video and a comment down below. Also, remember to hit subscribe as I post a new video every single day that you're not going to want to miss, including I have a very interesting video coming out tomorrow on is Thomas Massie going to lose his Republican primary to the Trump-endorsed challenger, Ed Galliran. That's certainly going to be a very interesting video that you're going to want to watch out for. For now, thank you so much for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and I hope to see you in a future video.